Linda Evangelista spent her career living every aspiring model's dream, traveling the world, dominating magazine covers, and becoming one of fashion's most recognizable faces. But beneath the spotlight's glamour lay an unspoken truth. Fame always demands a price. For Linda, the cost was higher than anyone imagined. The very beauty and image that made her iconic became the tools of her own undoing, leaving her isolated, disfigured, and deeply wounded. This is the story of how one of the world's greatest supermodels got destroyed by the same fame she helped define. Long before she appeared on the covers of Vogue and in the iconic black and white frame of a George Michael music video, Linda Evangelista was a teenager in St. Catharines, Ontario, who had already decided exactly what she wanted from life. Born in 1965 to a working-class Italian-Canadian family, she showed a fascination with beauty and image from an early age. Her walls were covered with fashion magazine pages, and she studied modeling as if it were an academic pursuit.
Well, for me, my dream was to be on the cover of Vogue, Annie Vogue.
Unlike many of her peers who hoped to be discovered, Linda planned her career deliberately. She took modeling classes locally, entered beauty pageants, and began booking small catalog jobs in Toronto. She accepted the slow start without complaint, earning a modest income modeling bridal gowns while putting together a portfolio with real range. There was nothing accidental about Linda's rise. She constructed it step by step. Her first significant break came in 1984 when she signed with Elite Model Management. The agency sent her to Paris, but the transition to the European market was not seamless. Many designers and casting agents were hesitant. Linda's sharp bone structure, strong presence, and instinctive professionalism didn't yet fit the prevailing look of the early 80s, which favored either youthful softness or aggressive androgyny. However, she persisted. In a business that often rewards passivity and its talent, Linda took initiative. She studied the work of other models, paid attention to camera angles, lighting, and makeup, and developed a presence that demanded attention without theatrics. Her breakthrough didn't come from a single campaign. It came from persistence, adaptability, and an unwavering belief in her place at the top of the industry. By the late 1980s, that belief began to pay off. By the end of the 1980s, Linda Evangelista had become more than a model. She had become a symbol of fashion's transformative power. Her creative partnership with photographer Steven Meisel helped define the visual language of the era. Together, they produced editorials that shaped not just trends, but the very idea of what fashion could express. Meisel once said, "Linda became the photograph," and that gift for transformation made her indispensable to the industry's top editors and designers. She possessed the discipline of an athlete and the instincts of an artist, arriving prepared, engaged, and fully in command of her image.
I work hard. I try and be professional. I'm never late, never miss a plane, never sick, never unhappy, never hate the clothes. I always say I like them.
Her decision to cut her hair short in 1988, a move considered career-ending by many at the time, became a global phenomenon. Designers who had canceled her bookings rushed to rehire her. Women around the world brought magazine clippings to their salons asking for the Linda. Her aesthetic choices didn't follow fashion, they set it. By 1990, she joined Naomi Campbell, Cindy Crawford, Christy Turlington, and Tatiana Patitz in George Michael's Freedom 90 video, a cultural moment that solidified the rise of the supermodel. From that point on, Linda was no longer part of the fashion world. She was a fixture in the broader cultural imagination. She headlined the biggest shows, fronted the most prestigious campaigns, and shaped the way the world saw glamour, strength, and beauty. Everything in her career had built toward this peak. She had become the face of fashion's golden age and a symbol of creative control in an industry built on reinvention. Yet beneath all that elegance and precision was a system built to move on quickly, even from its icons. And when that system shifted, the world that once celebrated her so loudly became unnervingly quiet. After dominating fashion in the 1990s, Linda Evangelista remained a celebrated figure into the early 2000s. She continued to work with major brands, appeared in select editorials, and was still treated as a legend within the industry. Her 2006 Vogue cover, which featured her pregnant and radiant, reminded the public that her influence endured even as fashion's center of gravity shifted to new faces and celebrity-driven campaigns. Though her appearances became more selective, her presence still mattered. She maintained her image with care, choosing her projects deliberately and showing a deep understanding of what made her compelling both on and off camera. But as the industry changed, growing younger, faster, and increasingly image-obsessed, so did the expectations placed on its veterans. The rise of high-definition photography, social media, and relentless aesthetic scrutiny introduced a new kind of pressure to remain timeless in a culture that rewarded the illusion of agelessness. By the early 2010s, Linda began stepping further out of the spotlight. For several years, she declined runway invitations, red carpet appearances, and press features. She was still remembered, but no longer seen. Then in 2015, she chose to undergo cool sculpting, a non-invasive procedure promoted as a safe and subtle way to reduce fat deposits. She later described the decision as one made carefully, in response to the aesthetic expectations of a career built on appearance and polish. The results were deeply unexpected. Linda developed paradoxical adipose hyperplasia, a rare condition that caused her fat cells to grow and harden rather than shrink. The physical changes were dramatic, the emotional impact was more profound. For a woman whose livelihood had been built on control of her image, her body, her presence, this sudden transformation was profoundly disorienting.
Is making them veer off in an angle. I don't think designers Versace won't want to dress me with that sticking up.
Over the next 5 years, she withdrew entirely. No more campaigns, no event appearances, no interviews. She remained at home, avoided mirrors, and turned inward, unsure if she would ever return to the public eye. The fashion world, which had once orbited around her, continued to spin. Her absence was never addressed, and the silence, both public and personal, became part of the story that Linda had not yet told. In 2021, after more than 5 years in seclusion, Linda Evangelista broke her silence with a single, devastating admission. In an interview with People magazine, she revealed what had happened after cool sculpting: the physical pain, the emotional collapse, and the invisible weight of being erased by an industry that once could not look away. She explained the condition in clinical terms, but the language that stayed with people was personal.
So Linda says this isn't about aging. She always knew she would get older. She says she just didn't think that she would look like this.
Her lawsuit against Zeltique, the company behind Cool Sculpting, sought compensation for the damage to her body, livelihood, and mental health. But even more than that, her decision to speak out felt like an act of defiance against the culture that had trained her to disappear the moment she no longer looked like the woman the world expected. The industry that built her myth never came to her defense. Not a headline, not a campaign, not a phone call.
Dream was to be on a Vogue cover, and it's happening again.
When Linda returned to modeling in 2022, appearing on the cover of British Vogue, it wasn't a traditional comeback. The shoot was carefully styled, the angles precise, the lighting generous, but there was no pretending. She told the truth plainly. She had been hurt, she had hidden, and she was still learning to love the face she now saw in the mirror. She no longer believed she had to disappear. Fame had elevated her to extraordinary heights, but it also created the illusion that beauty was her only offering. For decades, she lived under the weight of that illusion. Polished, controlled, exact. When her appearance changed, fame withdrew. It had shaped her into an icon, then vanished the moment she stepped out of the frame. That silence, more than anything else, was what destroyed her, and reclaiming her story was the only way to survive it.